Adventure Ho, Illumineers. Welcome back to the DuckTale Dads, a Lorcana podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Mack, and I'm joined again by Ryan and Nathaniel. And this week, we have another guest on the podcast. Please welcome, round of applause for Christian, one of our local champs here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Welcome, Christian.
It's a pleasure to be here, fellow dads. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, we've been exchanging texts for about 2 weeks now, trying to figure out a time for you to come on, and we are so excited to have you on the podcast with us this week, especially knowing that you are one of the tier one representatives here in our for us locally, so we're excited to have you.
Oh man, if you did think there's no video, they'd see my head swell at that comment.
Let me add to that, and hopefully we can burst this. I just want to say that I've been fanboying from afar, and it's a delight, a pleasure to meet you finally virtually. With your posts and the involvement in the Disney Lorcana community here in Minnesota, just really want to commend you on that. And also following you and your performances at different various tournaments, especially the one I think a couple weekends ago now in Wisconsin. You had a great showing. You had won a lot of games. I saw you bubbled out just barely to another Minnesota player. But it's exciting, and I'm really excited. I've been really pumped the last couple of weeks when Mack's been saying, hey man, yeah, we're texting Christian. We're going to try to get him on. I said, no way. Like, this is not happening. No chance. And now we're here. So thank you again for joining us. I'm really excited.
Absolutely. And to anyone listening throughout today's podcast, if you hear us fanboying, we'll just preemptively apologize. We are all huge fans of Christian's. We've all followed him from afar on Melee, on social media. He is amazing at this game and really thoughtful, super smart guy. And we are so blessed that you are with us today, Christian. Thanks again for joining.
Absolutely. I can't wait to talk about the game, man. This is great. This is why I'm here.
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, before we jump into recent tournament and your personal experience, and I know you're involved a lot with coaching, we want to get into that as well. A little bit of an icebreaker we have for you is what's new in your world. Just whether it's Lorcana or not, doesn't have to be anything about Lorcana really, but we like to explain just as dads and trying to stay involved with this really fun game, but also with our busy responsibilities as both husbands and dads. Feel free to share what you got going on in your life, but we'll give you a little bit of an example here. Ryan, why don't you start first? What's new in your world?
Sure. New in my world, I just got off my chest and off my back a presentation that's been kind of looming over me for a while. So I gave a presentation to a group of professionals and was able to get through the presentation and only put about 2 people to sleep in the room of 70-ish. So I felt that was like a huge success, talking about my professional stuff and not boring people too much. So it was really, really nice to have that weight off my shoulders now going forward and going into the last weekend too. What's new in your world, Nathaniel?
I'll do one quick personal, one quick Lorcana based. The personal is that this weekend I got some stuff assembled for both the kids and the fam. So got the outdoor furniture set up outside on our screened in porch. Really excited to have some spring and summer meals out there. As any Minnesotan knows, you do not get to have outdoor meals all year long. You have to maximize your window to do so.
Absolutely.
I also upgraded our 2 little guys up to their big boy beds, so assembled those as well, took the small ones out. That did not go over super well at bedtime, but now they're pumped about it. So a lot bigger beds for them. And the Lorcana thing is a confession that I may be testing some different decks based on some recent interests. And to reveal that, I will show you guys the sign that God himself sent me as I was cleaning up today after my kiddos. There was 2 stickers, and I did not stage this. There was 2 stickers left on the table that they had stuck to the table, and these were those 2 stickers.
Red and blue. He's joined the dark side. No!
You are a part of the dark side now, my friend.
Never dark. Never dark.
To provide some background there, Christian, if you didn't know, probably every other episode, Mack or me or Ryan makes a reference to me just hating on Mack for his red-blue
I'm
affinity.
a red-blue player.
And I may dabble in the dark arts. We'll say that as the other piece.
Everyone's got to do a little bit. And, everyone's got a deck they hate. A lot of people got Ruby Sapphire. I got my own deck that I just look across and I'm like, yeah, this deck's dumb. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. So I can appreciate that, Nathaniel.
Mack.
Yes. What's new in my world? Well, this past weekend, I solo parented. My wife attended a bachelorette party over the course of the weekend, so I was with my toddler all weekend. But with that, I'm surprised Ryan or Nathaniel, none of you mentioned this, but for the first time, all of our little ones got together this past weekend at Ryan's house.
That's right.
All have kids within 2 or 3 years of each other, and man, they really hit it off. That was really fun. They were just kind of entertaining themselves, and we were sitting in the background. So that was a lot of fun to see them kind of make new friends all together. So that's kind of the biggest new thing in my world.
I do want to add on to that how hilarious it was when my kid, who's twice as old as Mack's kid, is actually 10% smaller than Mack's kid. Yeah. I was reminded how my guys are really little.
My guy is an absolute unit. Like a 5-week preemie, and now he's 98th percentile in weight. It's absolutely crazy. So yeah, that's new in my world. Christian,
keep him off the bench, Mac. That's
yeah,
the
I know, right? Christian, what's new in your world?
Oh man, so so we got a tied story here between Lorcana and Personal World here. So
ooh, love it.
Let's see, it was last week, I believe, or a week and a half ago, was that Wisconsin tournament, and over the weekend here, sweet tournament. Excited to go over it, but before then, because I'm a man with a wife and 2 kids, we got to cut costs and keep it low, right? And so we got an Airbnb, and we bunked with 3 other folks local here. Lance, Derek, Josiah, my wife's cousin. Shout out to them. They were great. I had plans to drive there with my wife, Hannah, and then Josiah and Derek. But literally the night before, tragedy struck, and my wife had been struck by a deer. Unfortunately.
No.
So my one good car was in fact not good enough for Wisconsin anymore. So I made a panic and last minute decision to rent a car. And then the following week after, so a couple days ago, I got my car, brought it to the shop. It's like, what's the damage? It doesn't look too bad. Insurance totaled. I'm like, okay, sure is.
Cool.
So but I have a family full of car people. I am the least car person in my family though. But they're like, I sent a picture of it and they're like, oh, that's so drivable. So I hopped in. They took the whole driver's side panel off. The door handle is gone. The whole panel is gone. It's all in the car at least. So I'm looking at this like, somehow you guys have made it worse leaving it here than what I got. So I crawled in the passenger side, drove it back home with no mirror, shattered windshield, and it's sitting in my front yard right now, waiting to be fixed. So that was that's the new thing this weekend. But on a positive note, this is because of so much Lorcana traveling my wife and I have been doing the past few weekends. This is like the first weekend we got to stay home and just be mom and dad with the kids again for like the past 2-3 weeks. It's been really, really enjoyable. I played a different card game with my son, actually, that we have started decks for. The Star Wars Unlimited game. He also enjoys that quite a bit. So we were playing that some. He made me proud with a sick move that he killed me with. I'm like, you just keep doing this, son. You just keep doing it.
That's awesome.
So, yeah,
that's awesome.
That's been new with me for the weekend. That's been new with me.
That's pretty eventful though for the last couple of weeks for sure. And yes, you hinted to it where you want to dive into your tournament experience over the last couple of weeks as well. But I figured we'd start with some intro questions for this week. Just basically, speaking of Lorcana, how'd you get in the game? So have you played any other TCGs, or if you have, how does Lorcana stand out, and what's kind of kept your interest within the game? I think we wanted to start there. So how'd you get in Lorcana?
Yeah, so I to start with this, I really got to give a shout out to my older brother Matthew Young. I can't think of a time where there hasn't been a card game where I've gone into where he hasn't like messaged me like a month before releases like, this game looks kind of dumb. I'm like, yeah, should we buy product? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. It's a tale as old as time, and we've done it many times. It first started with Yu-Gi-Oh. So Yu-Gi-Oh was the first card game I've ever played. Back when I was like, I don't know, 11, 12 or so. Very, quite a bit ways back now at this point. My brother played it and I was getting into it. So, I didn't play very competitively at that point. I was very casual with it. But there was like a point when I started like, making my own money that I'm like, oh, I can actually buy these expensive decks now and like kind of play competitively. And that was like, I would go to like the local scene in Cambridge at the time, and that was like one of the first times I'm like, oh man, the competitive card game is like really, really cool here.
Can I jump in and just say that I had that same exact revelation just a few months ago of the like, Oh my goodness, playing or collecting a card game with your own money is a whole new world because I had taken a break. And I covered this a little bit on the earlier podcast episodes, but just briefly, I'd taken a break from like collecting anything for about like 10 or
Mm-hmm.
15 years and then getting back into it now and like in November, December, like walking into a game store and being like, oh yeah, I could buy that card. Where before I would be like, I got to do chores for about 2 weeks in order to save up to buy that one card to put into this
Yep.
deck. If I really want it, is it worth it? But yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. Go ahead and continue. Oh man, I just love that point
No
because
apologies.
it is a game changer. Holy moly.
Cash talks. It's pretty incredible. Like, oh man. And I can't, and I can't wait to go over like our prep for the tournaments coming up here, like some of the stuff we did for it, finances wise. But so from Yu-Gi-Oh, I played competitively for a little bit. And there was like a point where like I kind of stopped. I just stopped enjoying it. Yu-Gi-Oh as a game has devolved from like a competitive standpoint quite a bit over time, at least from my point of view. And then from there, I took a break for several years. I had gotten married. I had my first kid. So this is actually a pretty huge gap in between card games and life that's happened. And then of course my brother Matthew messaged me like, "There's this Transformers trading card game. Learn to play." I'm like, that sounds dumb. We're looking at pictures and we look at each other like, it starts in like 3 hours. So we get in the car and we immediately go 45 minutes to a game store and we sit down and we learn to play this Transformers TCG and we're like, that was so much fun. We got into the car and we're like, where can we buy more packs? So we hit up Targets the same day. We were buying packs for this game. I don't want to go too much into the game for this podcast, but it was one of the funnest trading card games that I played. It was like my second like kind of revelation of diving into like competitive play because there was points where like during I think it was like set 2 or set 3 of the game, they announced the store championships to qualify for this big world championship event called the Energon Invitational. And I remember telling my brother like, I want to be there. Like there was just something about it that I'm like, I really, really want to be there for that. And so I started learning the game as best I could from a competitive standpoint. I really, really enjoyed it. So that, RIP that game. That game died from COVID back in 2020. Got through 5 sets. And then a bunch of fan sets afterwards. There's several local people. Michael Ehlers, if you see him on the Facebook page, me and him fought in the Transformers trenches. It was a good time in our lives. But after that, I dove into like my next big card game, which was Digimon. So I played the Digimon card game right when it came out, and I went really hard into that. So I played that again for 2 years probably at that point.
Sure.
Again, really enjoyed it, but one thing I struggle with, and we're kind of saying all the things that I struggle with these other card games, are just kind of going to transition to what I really like about Lorcana, right? And so one thing I didn't like about Digimon, it was actually that the sets came out so much further ahead in Japan. And so once a set dropped in America, like that set has already been around for several months now. And so like the metagame was already like for the most part figured out. Like occasionally, the American metagame or the North American metagame would have a surprise deck or two, a format that would kind of like pop up and prove to be like a really strong contender in what would otherwise be expected as like a pretty solid metagame occasionally. And then the deck building for the game, like the gameplay mechanics as a whole was super, super fun and enjoyable. But a big thing for me is like having some personality put into deck building. And Digimon didn't have a whole lot of that. It was 50 card decks and like there wasn't a lot of room to tech. There wasn't like there were tech cards, but for the most part, like you could look at like a top 16 list, and if there was like 4 of the same deck, like maybe there was like 1 or 2 card differences between like each deck, right? It was pretty minimal. Now, granted, that might have changed by now. The game has changed quite a bit since I've left. There wasn't mulligans before, and that was another thing why I like did not want to experience anymore was the lack of mulligan system. But from there, I took another small break, quite a bit smaller, from Digimon to Lorcana. My brother Matthew, he's back again, was really excited about this game when it was first announced like a year or 2 before it was released. Because I'm actually, I know you guys are board game people. I'm a big fan of Disney Villainous. Really like Villainous. Yeah. So that was a game me and my wife loved to play already. And when we heard Ravensburger was making this game, we're like, the ears perked up a little bit. Like, oh, this game's probably gonna be like, gotta be like good, right? No idea, without knowing like how good this game was gonna be, basically, right? So We picked up product and we got, just a little bit of product at the time, even though back then in set one, for whoever was, I know a couple of you started quite a bit later. I don't know if any of you started during the set one era, like how crazy it was to get cards back then. But my wife and I got to just enjoy the game with really hokey, some structure decks plus basically, and it was so much fun. Like I really, really enjoyed that type of gameplay for a little while. And then I decided I really wanted to get competitive into it because I had friends like Dan from the Forbidden Mountain that I played Transformers with. I was diving really head into this game, and I loved the mechanics, and I loved the art, and I loved the expression of deck building, and my wife fell in love with that too. And for me, this is not my first foray into a competitive TCG, but this is her first, and she's like, I want to get really good at this game. I'm like, that's really hot, and I'm excited for that. And so we were going all in basically for the game. We actually went to one of the first big tournaments for the game in set one, which was a Miami event hosted by Pro Play Games before they started doing the Disney Lorcana challenges.
Yeah,
it was I remember the first place prize for this event was 2 cases of first chapter, which back then was like, oh, I'm hopping on a plane. It was no joke. There was no concern that I wouldn't go to a 250 plus person event in Miami to try to win at least a case of the first chapter, because that was how crazy it was going for. We did let's see, I did okay. I went 4-4, very middle of the road. I was still very catching up to a lot of the mechanics of and how Lorcana expects you to kind of play as a competitive player. And I made a last second deck decision the night before, which here's my first advice: never do that. If you're testing a deck all the way up and you decide to change your deck last second the night before, completely different, just don't do it. It's a terrible idea, no matter what game you're playing. But that's not to ramble too much on that. I think that's where it really where it kind of started, where my journey from TCGs kind of came to from there to here. And my family has just really dived head deep into Lorcana. My brother and his kids play as well. My son plays. My daughter, who's 4, loves to look at the cards.
Sure.
So it's a whole family affair for both me and my brother Matthew's family too. So it's been a really good thing for our family since the game came out.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's an incredible history. And I can say I've never played against you personally. I don't know if either of us have played against you at any sort of local or set champ event, but I have played against your wife, and she's absolutely wiped the floor with me. So the 2 times I've played against her,
man.
Yeah. So yes, the whole young family is absolutely killing it in our local scene here. So one thing you mentioned about too was sticking power. So you seem to have jumped to quite a few different games throughout your journey of TCGs. One thing that we've enjoyed, and we'll let you speak first, and then we can speak to why we've enjoyed the game and why we want to stick with it. But talk about maybe a little bit about why you feel like this game has a lot more sticking power than your previous experiences.
Yeah. So not only a big sticking power thing, of course, is the IP, right? Disney is such a big brand. If there's money, a lot of card games die because of capital, not enough capital. If there's anyone to deliver capital, it's probably Disney, right?
That's for sure.
They clearly have shown a lot of interest in their game when they're marketing it at Disney World and Disney parks and stuff like that. That's that's a good sign that they like the numbers that it's going with, and they're working to promote it, right? The Transformers TCG had no marketing behind it, even though it was actually made by Wizards of the Coast. Same people that made Magic the Gathering actually made this game. Yeah. Whoa. But there was no advertising to it, no money put into it, right? There's so that's a big part of sticking power too. But in terms of the actual game itself, right? One thing that I've been so impressed by the game, every set is at least and we can talk about what our thoughts on this for this current set, is the diversity of decks that you can play in a metagame, and the balance of the game across all the colors is pretty impressive, right? We can talk about this set and how that might not as strong be the case to say, or some of the previous sets too.
Sure.
But as a whole, if I'm gonna go to a local game store, right, a smaller competitive scene, I could build probably any deck in any color combination, and I have like some capacity to win some games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Find
even
some
like a bigger
success in some
tournament.
ways. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like I like one of the biggest like weakest color pairings in this game that people talk about is Ruby Steel, for like good reason, right? But I was at one of my losses in the 3K in Georgia on Sunday was to Ruby Steel as Ruby Sapphire. We can get into why that happened exactly, but it was like, you know, it just like totally happened because this game rewards so much like skill expression. Like the game is really simple to learn. It's a perfect example of like easy to learn, difficult to master, because there's a ton of decision points in this game. From what do you mulligan? Am I going first or am I going second? What do I keep in my mulligan? What do I ink? You know, like some games are decided by the first ink you do in the turn. And I think people love that type of gameplay. And it's satisfying. You know, there's a lot of satisfying gameplay elements in this game that you can find, not just in the gameplay, but also like the deck building. Where, you know, in Digimon there wasn't a lot of expression for deck building. In Lorcana there's tons, right? Like you can play against a Ruby Sapphire deck and they could have the same like core 45 cards, we'll say, but there could be a 15 card difference between several lists, and that's a huge that's
Pretty
that's an
substantial
incredible amount
amount
of skill expression.
Yeah.
It's super substantial. And I think that's also something that just like there's just a lot of those things that culminate together to just like such a beautifully crafted game that I think has such great staying power.
I think that's one of the things that's really attracted me to the game right away. In I mean, really the newest one here, and is just the variety that's available. You can focus on a very specific color combination in order to kind of get your feet wet and get your feet under you and get the ball rolling. But then after that, like the world is your oyster almost, and especially with the dueling cards they introduced, I feel like they did a lot to help out some sledging or flailing ink colors to really find some of that foothold that they were missing. And that's one of the things that I really like about it is the opportunity then to have that amount of expression, to have that level of opportunity to really do whatever you want and play the colors that you want. And even inside each of the colors, there's a couple of different options for things you could do. So this, like, you could do with one other ink color, you could do more of an aggro build, and with another, thinking about Emerald at this point, I think like they have the discard package, they have their like evasive package, they have their and then pairing it with different things. You could go aggro, and it could be more of a supporter. It could be the main heavy hitter of the combination. I think that's really cool. That's one of the things that I really liked about it, is the opportunity to really find the flexibility and figure out some of the differences. And every game still feels very fresh in that regard.
Absolutely.
Christian, I'd love to ask, because you touched on this, just having all of these other TCGs experience, particularly the last few years. And as a group, you know, the DuckTale Dads group, right? Like all of us have a year or less in Lorcana, and then essentially very little to none before that, as far as like a TCG or really, really more focusing on competitive stuff, right? Like little to none there, especially. Do you feel that having had some of that experience with, you know, Star Wars Limited on the side, Digimon, and then before that having the Transformers TCG experience, do you find that helps you when you're deck building? And then also, do you find that it helps you like in your gameplay, or both, maybe one more than the other? How do you find that sort of helps you, you know, prepare or feel like that experience you can rely on when it comes to playing a game like this?
Yeah, that's a super good question. And I think there's a lot of, even though mechanics tend to be different across games, all trading card games have like an underlying base level knowledge that translates really well between all the games, right? So, for example, like every card game, I would say, has decks that fall on like, how do I explain this? Every TCG has like two different types of win conditions for every deck for the most part. Like one that relies heavily on something called board advantage, and the other one that relies heavily on card advantage. So decks that rely heavily on card advantage are typically tend to be like control decks. So like Ruby Sapphire is a great example. Their whole game plan is to stick big characters that draw you a lot of cards, that remove characters, that try to whittle you down from resources while they maintain all the resources in the game. They have so many cards to play, and they're removing all the cards that you have. They are up on cards. That is card advantage, right? But board advantage tends to be like close to like aggro and combo-ish decks for the most part, more aggro. So like Amber Emerald aggro is a great example. Their whole game plan isn't to have the most cards in your hand by the end of the game. They're trying to win the game by playing as much to the board, as much characters to the field as possible, and winning really quickly, right? Steel Song is a great example of this. The whole point is to like stick singers to the board and being able to play these high cost ink songs for free, and maintaining characters and questing with their 2 questers very early on. Is a really good example, and that is something that you can really see in almost every trading card game to some capacity. The whole aggro versus mid-range versus control versus tempo kind of build and play styles that you're going to find in every trading card game translates pretty well to Lorcana to some capacity, and I think that's always been like a really good thing, or that's helped me quite a bit when like figuring out like what decks seem good, what cards seem good. Usually like if a card says draw a card, always consider it, right? Because like that's such a powerful thing in every trading card game, right? You know, but there's some small things that like don't seem powerful in Lorcana at first until you like look at like what it is like from a service. Like right now, like stats, like in some games, like stats don't really matter at all. Like Yu-Gi-Oh, stats don't matter. Like there's not like a huge breakpoint on like a card with a really strong effect versus like good stats that makes a big difference. Versus in Lorcana, at least right now we're at the point we're in the game, like stats actually matter like quite a bit. Like Maui Hero to All is a card from set 1 that has never been bad like ever in the game, because he has such big stats that he's constantly able to like at least 2 to 3 for 1 your opponent. And when I say 2 or 3 for 1, I mean my 1 card has removed at least 2 of your cards, or it took 2 of your cards to remove my 1 card. And that's part of card advantage. And that's something that you're going to find in every trading card game. These kind of 2 for 1 or 1 for 1 scenarios. It's seen in Lorcana as well.
Interesting.
So Christian, does that kind of play into, I've heard this phrasing on a lot of different folks who talk about the game. They talk about this concept of like, I'll take that trade, or I'm trading up, like a positive trade, being like maybe a lower cost character trading up into a bigger character. Or is that kind of sort of what you're getting at, that like making a series of those throughout a game tends to be a good path to victory?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it kind of like, a lot of games kind of come down to who makes the most like efficient trades, or like most effective use out of their turns and out of their cards, right? So kind of going back to the Maui instance, right? So Maui Hero to All is such an incredible card because it has an effect right away when it comes into play, right? It doesn't wait there. It immediately attacks and immediately at least kills 1 character or banishes 1 character. And then usually it sticks around. So that means the opponent has to do something to remove it, which is either maybe like if it had like a Let the Storm Rage on to remove it. They spent 1 card to get rid of it, and they lost another card to it. And I only spent 1 card to do that, right? So I'm up on card advantage there. Or for example, like support is like a really good keyword to like kind of showcase this. So for example, if I have like let's say like a Tipo, right? I have a Tipo on the field, and I have a character that has support, right? And I quest with my character with support, I gain my lore, and I boost my Tipo, and now my Tipo takes out, say, a Grammatala, or maybe even like a Tamatoa Happy as a Clam, right? Maybe it was a really big support character, right? Like Sheriff of Nottingham. I feel really good about that trade because my 2 ink character has removed your card that you have spent 6 ink on, right? And a lot of this, like, when people make like really good trades or like a value trade, right? Like that's a really clean example of like things that happen, right? So like if you're watching like a DLC match and you see people like not questing with their characters because their character is going to take it out and they'll live, that's going to give them higher value trade and a higher and like up on card advantage for that reason, because that character will still stick there and you're going to have to figure out some way to get rid of it, and so you're going to have to spend another card, right? That's why in Lorcana it's not really wise often to attack a character and leave damage on it, right? And that's like a big reason why. Does that kind of make sense?
So Christian, you mean specifically like if you're going to challenge into something, you need to clear the thing that you're hitting into versus just, I got like 1 damage on like a 4 willpower character. Like I still have to waste or utilize on my next turn some sort of action to get the rest of that off.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and there's some instances where like it's okay. So like if you're like an Emerald deck that runs Go-Go Tamago, you want to leave damage on there because the Go-Go effect is very strong. But for example, if I have if my opponent has a Daisy deck on the field, and I have a situation where like my Grammatala can challenge it for 3 damage, but it doesn't take it out, I would never do that because it would set me up because it's an amber. One, Rapunzel is like a big card that I would be giving them unbelievable advantage there, right? But also you have to think about like, what am I trading? Or what am I sacrificing by dealing like a little damage here to this Daisy Duck? Every time you attack, that's -1 lore, right? That means I'm not questing with a character. That means I'm not singing with a character. So
Sure.
that's where like sometimes attacking and leaving damage isn't really wise because you're sacrificing too much for a very low impact towards the rest of the game, right?
That's awesome. I'm already loving this episode so far. I mean, you're getting into the weeds and the ins and outs to help explain to our audience some of these aspects and mechanics of the game. So that was an incredible
I love this stuff. I love
explanation.
teaching this stuff. So
I mean, and we'll get into your coaching too, and I can already see why you love coaching, based on some of your explanations here. But one thing I want to get into is, as much as we all love this game and have really held on to it, no game is perfect. And I'm just trying to get into, like, there are some aspects of the game that I think, or where do you feel like can be improved? I guess one example, and I'm glad they resolved it, I really hated the set 4 Bucky era, right? And that almost got me out of the game. And what I appreciate is that Ravensburger actually did something about it. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Nathaniel was a part of that evil Emerald Steel meta shift.
That was good.
But thankfully, we got him off of it, and now he's back to the dark side. But so, like, what's something you can visualize improving with the game, and then after, I guess, Christian, we'll let you go ahead with it first, and then Nathaniel or Ryan, feel free to jump in after if you have any thoughts on it too. What's something you can see the game can improve on?
Oh man, I have such a huge list. I will narrow it down to brief overviews of what I think the biggest changes that can be made to the game are.
Consulting your notes. All right, can't wait.
Absolutely. So the high level competitive stuff that I have my biggest complaint with is 2-game format. This doesn't pertain to a lot of people, but I think 2-game format was one of the worst decisions they made with the game, and it's a good thing that they haven't. I mean, like, in my opinion, it's a good thing that they haven't announced DLCs yet. I know it's like they should be doing it, but if it means like waiting to not have 2-game format ever again, I think it's totally okay.
I'm very curious about that because when I saw 2-game format come out, I honestly thought like, oh, this is an improvement. This removes the dependency on a die roll in order to determine the matchup, right? I feel like when I'm playing so much, when I'm playing in set champs or when I'm playing against these two goons over here,
absolutely,
so much of the matchup is dependent on who wins the die roll, and I feel like the 2-game format kind of removes that level of variance from the game. So I'm very curious to hear a little bit more about like why you think 2-game format is effectively the worst decision ever.
Absolutely. Well, Ryan, that's a really good comment because that was actually my second point. Is I think the play draw disparity in this game is just too high, and I think most of that is based off of how the game is built. Unfortunately, like that's just something that I think naturally is kind of a problem with this game, the way it's built. But I think there are ways that you can potentially do it or fix it. But back to 2-game format. So, the goal of 2-game format was to help remove the play draw disparity, make rounds slightly shorter, because sometimes Lorcana can go lengthy, especially if you go into 3 games. And then it was to, I would say, make a more casual friendly environment or like tournament system for casual players, I would say, that are new to really big tournaments. But I think 2-game format has failed in every single one of these regards. Even though you get the opportunity to go first in both games no matter what, you still have to win on the draw is what it comes down to. And because the game isn't super well built for that, I will say, most of the time, it still matters a lot. Because in a 2-game format, if you win a game, you get 3 points. But if you 2-0, you get 7 points, right? That extra bonus point is so important. It doesn't look like it's that important, but it is so important to topping one of these events. Because not only like in a 2,000 person DLC, it's only top 64. That's only 2% of the field, first of all. So you're already like the die roll matters quite a bit, because now if I have the opportunity to go first, I get the advantage to be able to go first, and I'll have the advantage in game 2 knowing what my opponent is not playing. I now have the mulligan knowledge. They didn't have that because they lost the dice roll. So now we're still, and it gets even worse the farther you go, because 2-0ing is so important. If you get a couple draws or you get a loss, and now you're trying to make day 2, you're getting into this really bad bracket called the best of 1 bracket, where usually this is like rounds 6 through 9. It can be
Pseudo
where
knockout
you sit down
rounds,
with your
right?
opponents. What's that?
Pseudo knockout rounds, basically.
That's exactly what it is. They're do or die rounds, and you sit down in front of your opponent, and if both you and your opponent are aware of the situation that you're in, you know that if we draw this game, we're both out. One of us has to get the 2-0. One of us has to get 7 points. So you'll sit down, and in the beginning, you could say, "Hey, if we draw, we are effectively both eliminated. If whoever wins game 1, do you want to give that person the 2-0?" But there's a huge problem with that, because later on, Ravensburger did not like that and started disqualifying people for doing that. So the idea of the 2-game format, trying to eliminate the play draw disparity, didn't work, because down the road, that bonus point they implemented made it so that if you continue to play and get these draw games instead of 2-0, you're both eliminated. So it matters who goes first now, significantly. Now the dice roll is even more important. It's back to the best of 1 format, right? Back in that odd number of games that you need. It was supposed to, they want to lower, like they call it colluding, which is like a very messy term in TCGs. But they consider this colluding to a certain extent. But they can't effectively eliminate it because of the nature of the double elimination rounds at the end, right? And so now what you're supposed to say is, if you were like going to like the last one in Seattle, if you're in that situation, what you're supposed to do is sit down in front of your opponent and say, "Hey, if you win game 1, I will concede game 2 and hope they match you," because you can't ask your opponent to concede. That's against the rules. But you're not asking them to concede. You're just telling them you're going to concede. That's totally within the confines of the game, right?
So now there's an inherent social pressure that you're also introducing to this randomized process of a stranger that you're sitting across from. Oh, okay.
It is so awful. It is truly awful. And like, it's even worse when like you're ready to do it and the other person isn't, whether they want to dream crush you. But most of the time it's because the 2-game format rules aren't specified very well. And so there's a local player, Vo. He was in this situation. He was in round 9. He did the thing. Hey, if you win game 1, I'll concede game 2. I mean, this is to get day 2. There's a lot of money
the bubble
at stake
match
in this match. It's the bubble match, man. Yeah. And he crushes game 1 because he got to go first, and his opponent shuffles up for game 2 and crushes him. His opponent got nothing out of beating Vo. No prize, no let it go, no bubble, nothing. All he got out of playing that game 2 was to take Vo out of it, right?
Yeah.
But like, it's not really, but the way it's set up, they're encouraged to do that, unfortunately. So that's
interesting.
Like the social pressure is awful. The play draw disparity actually really is fixed, and it's actually better to go 0-2 in rounds than draw, because it puts you in better brackets for the next rounds. Like, drawing is that bad. Yeah. Like, think of it like this: if I 2-0 a round and then I draw, I have to draw 3 times to make to beat 1-2-0, because you only get 2. If you win 2 games, that's only 6 points, right? So,
and just to push it,
yeah.
Sorry, to clarify on the Vo thing too, right? Like, I think what's particularly challenging about that scenario is, for a fact that a lot of other people did do best of 1 in round 9.
Yeah.
Because the system is incentivized in that way. So
yes,
it's not like Vo loves best of 1s, right? Like, he's put in a scenario where that is his and so many other people's only opportunity to get that day 2, to get the promo, and the other person who he had just beaten in that game, to your point, right? Like so many other people at that point, it is kind of crushing to lose when you're that close. But if you've lost game 1, then you are guaranteed to fall below the threshold of points. So it is totally pointless for you. And in some ways kind of almost unfair, but we can't, I think, just like how I'm actually really curious while we're on this topic, because I think this is another similar one at a much smaller scale, but it's what happens at locals. So if you're at a set champs, right, and you go 3-0 and it's a smaller tournament, or maybe you're 4-0 and it's round 5, intentional drawing is very common to guarantee both players to make top cut. So you're guaranteed to get your promotional enchanted card, the promo, like the Scar from set 6, for example. Have you ever had a scenario where maybe you've been in there and the other person was like, no, I want to play, even though it could potentially, based on how math is mathin', it could potentially affect your ability to get into the top cut?
I've actually had that happen to me twice. Once at a local level, and I did that mainly because I wanted to keep playing, and I have opinions about intentional draws, but at that point, I just wanted to keep playing. And I was first seed, my opponent was second seed, so he was at a point where, like, if he lost this round and the next, he was still in top 8, like the way the math worked out. So it was very low stakes.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually happened to me in Wisconsin, where I was 5-0 in the first 5K, going into round 6, the second to last round. And I actually offered my opponent to draw, and he said no, because I was first seed and he was second seed, and in the top cut it was based off play draw who got to go, or based off seeding who got to go first. So he was actually wanting to try to get the first seed, and I respected that immensely. And I will always I always respect people that say they'd rather play than draw, but I don't disrespect intentional draws. I've drawn many times. As a competitive player, like, if it's in the rules, it's a tool to be used. I think it's a decent reward for people that have done well to have that nice little reward and incentive. It's also one of those things that, like, kind of like the 2-game format, it's hard to put rules in saying that you can't do it, right? Like, even if you don't do, like, this is where, like, the collusion thing gets, like, really tricky, because, like, even if you put in the rules saying you can't intentional draw, like, Yu-Gi-Oh has no intentional draw rules, you can still play and get to, like, a point where you unintentionally draw, right? So, like, in that way, it's, I think it's not a bad thing. I think it's a very neutral thing for the game. But not to ramble, but yes, I have had that scenario, once at a local level and once at a bigger level, but for 2 different reasons.
Interesting.
And Christian, how do you feel about, like, the concept of intentional draws? Like, do you wish they would, like, if your own opinion, like, do you wish we would just not have that as an option? Like, if everybody were to abide by this, like, you have to play out the matches.
I'm very neutral on it. Like, I think it's fine that it is, and I'd be fine if it wasn't. At the end of the day, I always want to play more Lorcana. So, like, but I also have the competitive nature in me is like, well, I want to make top cut, right? Like a goal of mine is to try to, top majority of events I go to, and the drawing guarantees that goal, right? But I think this is such an interesting question, because I think a lot of people have really strong opinions about it, and I have such a whatever one about it. But at the end of the day, like, if there's, like, ways to incentivize, like, not having to draw, I would like that more. Like what happened to me in Wisconsin, like, if there, like, at set champs, if it was, like, play draw dependent, based off your seed, there'd be a lot more, like, reason to play, right? And I would like that, right? Sometimes, like, a lot of these set champs will have, like, pack per win, and if you draw, you don't get a pack, right? Like, that's just, for some people, that's, like, incentive, right? And some people have played for that reason. I totally respect it. But I think, like, for me, I wish there was more incentive not to draw, but because drawing is in the rule set and a tool for the competitive player, I'm going to use it. So that's kind of my stance on it.
Yeah. So part of why I asked that question, right, is based on the thresholds that Ravensburger themselves have set for top cuts. So the conversation around IDs does change depending on that number of participants in a tournament. And why I say that is, if you have 15 people, which actually we went to multiple set champs this last set, that there were 15. So it was it was right at the threshold where it was actually the top 8 were going to get the promo card, but they were only going to do to a top cut 4, which meant that if you were 3-0, if you do lose that last matchup, there is a chance that I guess math could math out in a way, right, where, like, you could bubble out as 5th.
A 3-1 bubble outs. Yep.
You could be the 3-1 bubble out. Now, I think that, like, that would feel really bad, knowing that you could have just drawn and guaranteed that those 2 people would then be, the 1 and the 2 seed or whatever, right? But I think that's part of the other conversation there too, because if that had one more person and you had 16 people, the guidelines say that would be a top 8. And even if you were to play that out and lose, say you're 4-0 and then you fall to 4-1, you'd still be. I don't think there's any math that would math out where, like, 4-1 would not be top 8 in a 16-person tournament.
Not even close.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's where it changes too, where it's like, hey, this actually knocks me out of the whole thing, not even just like, from making top cut versus just like even like a seeding conversation.
Yeah.
I love where this is going,
thing,
and
right?
I love like I feel like we could talk about this for days, weekends. We would just get together for a weekend and hang out all together. But I do want to hear more about your competitive and your tournament experience so far to date, especially kind of focusing on more recent ones since we are in set 7, talking about the different decks you saw, the different experiences you had at those, wherever you want to take that.
Let's start with what combination you did at these events,
Ooh,
and the
good call.
reason you chose for that, and then get into because you played in both the recent big Atlanta event, I think, as well as or just Georgia, and then in Wisconsin. Yep. So let's get into that too.
Yeah. So I like to play a lot of different decks. I think for me, a lot of the joy in the game is being able to play a lot of different things and feel like a lot of things are viable. But I definitely have a favorite deck color, and that is Ruby Sapphire.
All right.
I have taken, and just kind of Sapphire period, actually. I'm a big Sapphire fan. Let's see. So starting with Wisconsin and Georgia, because it's kind of in the same timeline. I was testing with a lot of local folks like Ernie and Vo and Alex about, because we're going to Georgia and we're going to Wisconsin. Like, what are we going to bring? Sapphire just looks amazing, more than ever. So what are we bringing to this? We were expecting a ton of Sapphire Steel, and Sapphire Ruby hasn't really gotten to like a great point yet. And I was doing a lot of research. I'm part of like a lot of Discord, so one of the bigger names in the community for Ruby Sapphire, his name is Sailor. He's a world's qualified competitor, very big name in the Sapphire Ruby circles. And he had a recent deck list posted right before Georgia that I pretty much I stole, right? I love to deck build, but I will have no problems taking a deck from a better deck builder than me and running with that. And Sailor is much better deck builder than me.
No shame.
No. More people need to be more open about decks that they have just used from other people, and more people just need to be open about, like, it doesn't matter, right? It absolutely doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Agreed.
And so I took Ruby Sapphire to both Georgia and to Wisconsin. Slightly different variations on the list. So in Georgia, I was expecting a much wider field of both Sapphire Steel, and then because it was so early still, and this is like one of the first really big ones of 300 plus people, maybe potentially Amethyst decks and other Steel decks and other discard decks. One of the more common cards to play is Grammatala, Keeper of Ancient Stories. I opted instead to run the new Scrooge, Resourceful Miser, in the deck, specifically for the purpose that his stats were just better. Like a 4/4 versus a 3/3 on turn 3 doesn't sound like it'd be that much different, but it is absolutely the biggest difference maker ever. I ironically ran into a lot of Amber Steel aggro decks, which is already I think a good matchup for me.
With the Daisy.
Yeah, exactly. Like they'll play Daisy and then I just slam Scrooge, and it's like, well, I had a crazy turn actually where I got to go first, and I played a popsicle. Then I sailed, played another popsicle, and then on my turn 3 with 4 ink, I played a coil. Then I played a Vitalosphere, and then I tapped all 4 for Scrooge. Found another item, inked for turn, shrunk a guy, and then I tapped 1 to use the Vitalosphere. I tapped for Scrooge to attack and kill a Daisy against an aggro deck, and it was probably it was one of the most disgusting turns I've done in a long time. It was like in a world where like Sapphire Ruby doesn't have a lot of time or has so much like gap, you could say, to like aggro them, there was like no gap there at that point. It was like, oh, it's already begun. So the Scrooges were really good there in a more open field. Yeah, it was a good time. It was a really, really good time.
For you, not for your opponent.
Oh, yeah, it was not a great time for my opponent. It was, he didn't have a good time. It was super tough because that Scrooge attacks for 6 too because of the Vitalosphere. So like anything was over at that point. But over the course of that event, I went X3 in the main event. It was another just brutal top cut. You had to be X1 pretty much to try to be on the bubble for top 8. So I was, let's say I finished 45th out of 350 or so. I was very happy with that record. I missed out on the top 16 cash or whatever by 1 round. I lost my last round to Amethyst Steel, which I had spent most of my weekend losing to, actually.
For us naive individuals that you're talking to, what's X3 versus X1 mean?
Yeah, so that's basically like X is how many wins you have, and then like the number after is how many losses. So in a 9-round event, if I went X3, that means I won 6 rounds and lost 3. Or if I was X1 in a 9-round, I won 8 rounds and lost 1. So yeah, it's just TCG shorthand that a lot of folks use.
We're learning. We're learning here, so we appreciate it. We don't want to make a fool of ourselves when we get to the next set champs.
Well, for what it's worth, it's more habit that I say it out of anything. But like, it's not any slower to be like, yeah, I went 6-3 versus X3. It's like, well, I actually sound kind of stupid when I say it out loud. Like I'm just forgoing 2 letters to say 6-3 instead of X3 basically.
Christian, did that terminology start becoming a thing because there is some disparity in terms of round length? Like some tournaments will do like 7 rounds or 8 round, 9 rounds, so it's easier just to be like measure however many you lost means you're going to be either out or in.
Yeah, you could say that for the most part. A lot of bigger tournaments, like if you're X2, you're probably out of top cut. Like if you lost 2 rounds, you're probably just done for most of the top cut pricing. And that's like most TCGs for the most part, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Lorcana especially because the top cuts are super tight, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, sorry we were interrupting.
Yeah, that's been enough. No, don't apologize. Don't apologize. Interrupt me as much as you want, please. So that was the main event, and then Sunday, well, there was an extra 3K event that me, Bo, and Hannah participated in. That was about 145 people, and I started off with a round 1 loss against Amethyst Steel again, which is super tough. Because I'm on the hero run already, and I actually get all the way up to the second to last round, and I had lost in one of the worst ways I've actually ever lost in Disney Lorcana, but it was a really good learning experience. I lost to Ruby Steel, which is a super, super rogue deck, but it was a very interesting build. It was an aggro build. So it was he won the dice roll, which is always good. And then he started, he played Hook into Mr. Smee, into Lawrence. I'm like, oh man, this guy's kind of aggro. And then he inks a Mushu. I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy is Ruby Steel. I've never played against this, ever. But I have a general idea of what this deck's trying to do. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to quest with Hiram, because you're going to slam a Mushu and blow me out of the water. So he gets to a really far lore total game 1. He gets 18. But I'm at the point where I have a ton of cards in hand, I have a ton of removal in hand. He has no cards in hand, no cards on the field. And then he top decks a Mushu and plays it at 18. Nothing else on the field, no cards in hand. And I would say after about 18 rounds total in about a 36-hour time span, I think I was just maybe a little tired, a little gassed out. The turn before that, I had played an 8-drop Tamatoa, So Shiny, and I actually forgot to use his effect to grab back an item on play. And it didn't matter too much, because I was going to grab a Sapphire Coil that he benjed earlier. And it's not a big deal because I could just quest to do it again. But I was frustrated that I played sloppy, because I kind of played sloppy the round before. I would say I'd play a card and I would literally just play the wrong card in my hand. Clearly not trying to play. Yeah. I tapped 2 and I didn't mean to play the big Sisu. It was clearly not the card I'm trying to play. But it was definitely start of where I think my mind was just totally done, unfortunately. Where I'm like, okay, I forgot to do this. I gotta get this coil back so I can big Sisu this Mushu, because it got 4 health. So I'll quest with my Tamatoa. I'll grab back a Sapphire Coil. I'm gonna pay 2 to play it. I'm gonna ink a card, and I'm gonna play Sisu. And I say, all right, the Mushu is banished. And he says, it's actually not. And I'm confused. And then he tells me that I forgot to say trigger coil when I inked. And I was so upset because he was completely right. I had totally forgot to sequence correctly. I played too fast. I forgot to use the May effect of my Sapphire Coil. And in these big tournaments, you really got to do that,
Sure.
I was very frustrated because it was not his fault that happened. It was all me. And so at that point, I totally spiraled. And I said, well, you're going to win because you're going to attack your Mushu into my Tamatoa and gain 2 lore. Forgetting that Mushu is not on challenge, it's on banish. And so, I'm going to lose anyway, so I'm going to quest my big Sisu. I'll quest my big Sisu and just, go to 12 or whatever and pass to you. And then he's like, well, I don't know why you did that. I'll attack your Sisu and gain 2 lore. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not on challenge, it's on banish. So if I had just kept everything upright, even with that big mistake, I would have still at least probably won. Because the Mushu only quest for 1, he couldn't have taken out the Tamatoa. It was just a very unfortunate series of just really sloppy play that happens. It just totally happens sometimes. And
get tired.
Game 2, I took it really handedly. Yeah, it was It was tough. I was very frustrated. I took game 2 and then game 1, or game 3, I bricked really badly and he had a really aggressive start, so I lost the game 3. And that's how I lost essentially my winning in to top 8 for that one. So I finished 13th and lost to Ruby Steel for it. But it was, it was a good lesson. Just like if you're starting to feel like tired in a tournament, like have a game plan to like figure out how do you kind of get back into it, right? Like I had not eaten anything. I had I had no water. I was like, I was looking like a shrivel up piece of jerky probably at that round. So I was not doing myself any favors, unfortunately.
Fueling is very important. That's for sure. Yeah,
it is. It's super, super important.
Ryan had a whole grocery bag. Mm-hmm. Ryan had a whole grocery bag at his first set champs. It was awesome.
That's it's big. When I go to set champs with my you gotta be, when I go to set champs with my son and even just local events, I'm like, I gotta get snacks. Because I'll be fine. But my son's gonna be saying he's hungry before round 1 is done. And I'm like, that's gonna be a long night for both of us. So let's get them granolas in there, right?
Sure. And then with that, moving into Wisconsin, I'm assuming there was some learnings moving into the Wisconsin event. And we, no joke, I think with Georgia, I think with us, our friend group, we kind of missed it, so to speak. We weren't really following on Melee as much as we probably wanted to, but we knew about Wisconsin, and reason being too, we knew a lot more of the locals from our Twin Cities area were going over to drive over to Wisconsin, so we were much more in tuned, and every round we would text each other updates on, oh my gosh, Christian went 2-0, yes, or Vo went 2-0, or Alex, for example.
Awesome.
And so we were actually really into it throughout the course of the weekend, both days. And so talk about your learnings maybe from each weekend, and then kind of the experience, because Minnesota did really well both days overall.
Super well.
So I would
Minnesota was cracked.
Kudos to the Twin Cities club. But talk about maybe what you learned from the two events, and then what was the difference, I guess, because you made top cut in one. Sorry, it's a little spoiler, and unfortunately bubbled out like the last one, 17th.
Yep.
And the next day. So how was that?
I had first experience. It was wonderful. It was the tournament was really well ran. The pricing was good. And there was a total of 15 Minnesota local players that I knew personally that was there.
Wow.
And one of my favorites, before getting kind of into the tournament itself, but like one of my favorite experiences in Disney Lorcana is going to the Lorcana Challenge events with a huge group of locals. And that experience that you guys talked about, like checking in with players like on Melee and being excited about that, like we got to do that live and in person. Like we always found a gathering spot, like where are we gathering up, and we talk about our rounds, we check in how people are doing, and we're like lifting each other up. And it's like one of my favorite moments of that. Like Georgia was fun, but there was only 3 of us there, so like the check-in portion was pretty small. But like the check-in portion at Wisconsin was great. Like I have one of my fondest memories of the game was in DLC Las Vegas, where it was round 8, and me and my friend Jonathan Rivera were going in, and he was I had to battle for my winning in, and he was battling for the top 128 spot to earn a let it go, and he was like gassed out and tired. He's like, I don't think I can do it. I just about like slapped him in the face, like with as much joy as I could muster. Like, nah, you're good at this game. You can do this. You have every chance you can to 2-0 your next opponent. It does not matter. Go and fight. And he won, and he comes back with a let it go in his hand. And that was like one of my favorite moments of the game. It was like being able to like be a part of like encouraging a fellow teammate in that regard. And Minnesota and Wisconsin was like no different, right? In terms of like deck changes for Wisconsin, I played Ruby Sapphire there as well. But the big difference was expecting a heavier mirror match environment with more Sapphire Steel and more Sapphire Ruby, because Sapphire Ruby did really good in Georgia. It started to take off a lot in the online circles. It's like, all right, you got to plan for this. And the Scrooges had to come out for the Grammatalas, basically. It was the biggest change.
Sure.
Because in a mirror match situation, the 4-4-on-3 doesn't matter as much versus the guaranteed card you're going to get. Because sometimes Scrooge will just miss a card. But Grammatala always replaces herself, right? And so Grammatala is good both early and late game, where Scrooge is like only really good early game and really good late game trying to find Lucky Diamond. That's kind of it, right? And so that was the biggest change. On the list, and we're not playing Maui Sharks in any of the lists between Georgia and Wisconsin because Sapphire Steel is so prevalent. Zeus is just there's too much Zeus and Pete for Shark, in my opinion, to do well for having a 6-cost character that doesn't do something when it came into play. Now with Sapphire Ruby being more popular, I think Sharks would actually be like a good choice. But this is where like Lorcana metas change like every week, and this is like the exciting part as a competitive player. You always gotta be like in tune for what's happening and like how you can change your deck for it. But yeah, Wisconsin was really good. I ended day one. It was interesting because they made the last second decision from top to make it top 16 instead of top 8, which I think was a good thing overall. I think it made for a better tournament experience. Kind of like going to like the intentional draws section that you talked about, Nathaniel. Like it gives more reach for players to try to get games in. It also like presents like a more wider metagame than what probably it was going to look like on paper if it was just top 8, all things considering. But ironically, the top 16 shift was worse for me because I ended day one 5th seed, which was awesome. I was super stoked, and there was 5 of us in Minnesota in top 16. But I had the unfortunate situation of playing round 1 of top 16 against the guy I drove 5 hours with. Right off the bat, Mr. Derek Toso, Bannable Harka, shout out to him, OG YouTuber, Minnesota, one of the best players in Minnesota, really good guy. We play our mirror match, and he ends up taking it from me. Unfortunately, top 16 didn't get any cash, so it was like an interesting situation where I think it was a good thing that it went down to top 16, but it was worse for me as a result because I was 5th. I was already in top 8, so I actually missed the top 8 because I had to play my top 16. But that's like neither here nor there. And then day 2, I don't do as well. I go X2, which is 5-2 in this case, and I get 17th. Having my round 3 opponent unfortunately lost the last round, so my opponent match win tiebreaker went down, and Garrett Stroud, shout out to him, jumped me and got to 16th. But you know what? If it's a local jumping me, how can I complain? And you know, and a big thing too, like I always say, is like someone has to be 9th, someone's got to be 17th. You know, there's a lot of stuff that like it happens. You know, someone's got to be that placement. You know, and it's totally okay. You just got to accept that it can be you, and you kind of got to like accept. And when we're talking about like player goals for tournaments, like I felt good. Like it was a bummer getting 17th, but I also felt good getting 17th too, out of a very strong room there. You know, like I still won majority of my rounds. I did as well as I could in the rounds that I could control, and the aspects I couldn't, didn't pan out well for me. But that's okay, and that's how these things go. Like I was very excited to say that I made top 16 and 17th both days in a row. Like in my, like to me, that's like a really awesome like thing to be excited and proud of. And a lot of people agreed with me on that, which was super nice.
Yeah. And Christian, I want to just clarify too, for anyone who's listening, the field at that Wisconsin tournament was extraordinarily strong for being, yes, it was smaller than the Atlanta,
like Charlie's Collectible
one, but because of the specific hosting like group, right? Like sponsored event, like there were literally world-class players in Wisconsin.
Several. There was like 20 Golden Mickey winners in that room. It was,
oh my gosh,
it was really incredible. Yeah. Like Zan Syed was there, and like it was hosted by World-Class Cards, and they have a very prolific team member base. They flew all their members for this. So like Zan and like DKP from Germany, they flew him out to Wisconsin to just play in this event. I sat next to him several times. It was really quite incredible. And it was really cool. They offered like these bounty prizes to where if you played against someone that had earned a Golden Mickey, if you just play against him, you got a pack. But if you beat him, you got 3 packs.
Oh, and nice.
That was like, it was super fun, right? I always love that type of thing because I think like sometimes people are like kind of like afraid to play against like known top players or whatever. But I thought that gave like a really nice incentive to like want to do that. I dodged every bounty, unfortunately. Like I was like super excited to play against Golden Mickey players, and like I dodged all of them, which I'm like, but is what it is though.
Yeah, one thing that we've had and discussed in other episodes of our podcast is our collective friend group, our main core five of us that play this game together. One thing that we've talked about is our goal, our mission is to attend either a DLC or one of these, I'll say, mid-tier events, bigger than your local
Sure.
set champs, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a preference, or if look for people that are looking to attend one of those as their first, is there one that you feel just like, no, just full send, do the DLC, the prizes are great anyways, you should just go do that for the experience, or where's the benefit? Maybe the benefit's higher in one of the mid-tier events, I guess. What's kind of your advice and pros and cons kind of quickly on that?
Super awesome question. I would say right now, it's hard because there's no DLCs to attend right now, but I would say like the DLC experience, if you've never gone to like a really big tournament, is like really good. I would say still. Like I complain about the 2-game format, but like the experience is still like really awesome, especially like if you as like a collective friend group are going and you just want to experience the big tournament, you're not like trying to set yourself up to like I'm gonna try my hardest today to. Obviously, like you're not trying to, but like if that's like not even like a secondary or tertiary goal for you, I think I think a DLC is great. They give like incentives to stay in the rounds. They provide these prize wall tickets. The prize wall items tend to be pretty good. Like most of the DLC stuff had like the Rapunzel and Cinderella Stoutheart alt arts that weren't foil. You could win from prize wall tickets, and they actually ended up being very like like valuable, right?
Sure.
Like basically enchanted that you're winning. And they have lots of different side events. There's like on-demand pods for like constructed and draft and sealed if you want to participate to try to like earn tickets or just play Lorcana. I would say the DLC is probably what I would recommend to someone that's like kind of like looking to like I want to go to a bigger event than a set championship, but like I want to go for like an experience more than anything like that.
Okay.
The Charlie's Collectible show was pretty was similar to that because they also had like on-demand pods and side events. I would say that's what I would say probably. If you're looking as like a friend group, like we're gonna go play Lorcana for a weekend and have a blast, the DLC is really perfect for that.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of similar feedback from other local players here, especially with the side events. Even if you don't do well on the main stage, you can still earn a lot and make it well worthwhile with all the side events as well. But the thing, these mid-tier events, they could be a lot closer to us, right? And it's like the pros and cons on the travel as well. You gotta consider. But as dads here that are, I'd say we personally are competitive enough where we feel like we can hold our own, and locally now we're kind of feeling like, hey, let's try and convince our wives to let us do this just one weekend. That's kind of that's probably the biggest hurdle, is convincing the wives to let us go for a weekend.
See, that's where you got to get your wife to want to go too. That's the hurdle's easy at that point. Now you just need babysitters. But I might be in the minority there.
True.
A very, very astute point. That's a dad tip for sure. Get everybody on board. Get everybody involved in the game.
Make it a family affair, a family trip. Dad tip.
So one thing too, and we're pushing an hour now, and we don't really care how long this goes. We were planning anywhere from an hour and 15 to an hour and 30. With that, we wanted to make sure we touch base on your coaching and teaching. I know you're really passionate about that. We see a lot of the posts that you post locally with regards to providing experience, especially now that set champ season is upon us. I would say the first question I wanted to ask is, how is it different coaching maybe a new player into the game versus an experienced player? Have you had experiences in both, or do you tend to see one versus the other? And if so, and if you do see both, what's it like teaching both?
Yeah, super awesome question. So I would say like the coaching experience is when I coach someone, I try to tailor it as much as I can to like what they need and request as like as a player, right? And oftentimes like new players, if they see coaching, it's because they're overwhelmed by the TCG landscape. Like someone's telling me about mid-range decks and I don't know what that means. What's board advantage? What's tempo mean? Like they're speaking Mandarin to me. And that's like a big part of like when I coach, I sit down with them to like go through like everything you kind of need to know in a competitive landscape for a TCG tournament prep. Like what things do I need to consider when going to a tournament? What is like some of the etiquettes? Like what are things I need to expect? Because like that's like that's not always intuitive, right? Like I remember my wife, I'm gonna put my wife on blast here. The very first local tournament she went to, she's like, "Hi, my name's Hannah. I'm playing Amethyst Field. What are you playing?" That's like you never do that at a local tournament. You never like just ask them what they're playing before you shuffle up and roll dice, right? At a local event it doesn't matter, but at a big event that's not going to happen, right? So that's like a big thing there, and I would say oftentimes, like if an experienced player is coming to me for coaching, they're looking for very specific goals. Like, hey, I want to get better at this matchup. Can you sleeve up this deck? And can we sit down and talk through the matchup? Talk about what things I need to mulligan for when going first versus going second. What plays do I need to be aware of? What are like some of my outs? Like, I want to talk through this matchup. I want to get better at this matchup, right? So that's like a really big thing that I've done. And then actually one of the more common ones I've done is for people that have been kind of out of the game for a while, like, their dads, their moms, they don't have, they've been busy with work. They've been, they played Lorcana. They kind of skipped like the last 2 sets just because of life, and they're back in. They want to get into a set championship, and they want to like try to earn, they want to get top 8 at like their small local event, or like their 25, 30 person, and they want to just try to win a card, but they need catch up, right? And so like I've done a lot of like catch up sessions where I go through the current meta game, what they should expect, what kind of insight I can provide, at least on like a local level. If I've been to like the store before, I can offer that, and like what are decks to expect, how to tackle the meta game. What like deck choice, like that's a common one too. If they're coming back in, is like, I played this deck, is that deck still good? It's like, yeah, that deck is still good, or like that deck you could play, but if you're looking to do the best you can, if you have certain cards available, I would push you to learning this one instead. And so that's like a big part of the coaching experience that I try to offer. And one thing I do want to say real quick on the platform, if you reach out to me, I'm a big believer in information should always be free. I really don't, my coaching isn't paywalled information. If you ask me a deck list question or anything like that on Facebook, I will gladly answer that at some point, right? One of the biggest things that like doing the coaching session the value that it offers you is that I'm giving you every dedicated second that I can, and tailoring things specifically towards you and to answer questions, right? So if you ask me like, hey, what deck should you consider for a set champ, for a Facebook question, I might ask you a couple of questions like, oh, well, what do you like to play? What do you expect? And I can answer that, as time comes, right? Because that's just what I believe in.
Sure.
But if you like the dedicated session, if you like notes afterwards and follow-ups and all that stuff, that's where the in-person or the individual sessions really shine, I would say.
So Christian, if somebody asked you and wasn't willing to provide a lot more context, you just had to answer it, and they said, what deck should I bring to my set champs that's starting tomorrow? What would you say right now?
With no context whatsoever. Oh, that's super hard. I would say a Sapphire deck.
Nice.
Got it.
I would say your most comfortable Sapphire deck is what I would play. There's some that are way better than others, but especially at set champ levels, it's different. Like preparing for DLCs is different than preparing for set champs. It's very, very different ballgame. But I would say your most comfortable Sapphire deck is one that I think has the highest chance of success, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, don't be surprised now if us naive individuals are just very mid-tier players here. Now that you said it, I mean, the door is now open. We are going to message you individually and be like, oh, hey, what are you thinking about these cards versus this card in our Ruby Sapphire deck? And thankfully, you play the same deck I do, so I get a little bit more of an advantage there. Welcome, Nathaniel, to our side. Ryan will get you there eventually on the Ruby Sapphire
No chance.
train.
No chance.
Once you ramp on 2, you never go back, dude.
Absolutely.
I played Burple last set, so I got a taste of that, and I still love that part. But
yeah,
the red part.
That was
Ryan doesn't like
one of
those
my other
red
losses
decks.
in Georgia with Blurple. Blurple kicked my butt, actually. Yeah, I really like Blurple right now.
It's fun. It's fun. So you shared prior to us starting the recording, you shared a really great story that I wanted to, if you're comfortable sharing it, bring it to this the recorded session as well. You talked about getting your family involved earlier. One of the dad tips is getting your wife on board as well, and joining the game and being at the high competitive level too. You shared that you brought your son into the game too. Can you tell us a little bit about what that process was and how you managed to kind of stage that and successfully do so?
Yeah, absolutely. Bringing my son into the game was one of my greatest like joys and surprises I've gotten to do with him, because it's like, it sounds funny, but TCGs has just been such a passion of mine for so long that like seeing him have interest in it was just like, such a shock. It was already a shock to see my wife be so interested, but my wife is naturally very competitive, and so the idea of her kind of enjoying this, like the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, this makes actually like a ton of sense. Just the perfect game for it. But for my son, when he kind of showed interest in it, he was 6 at the time because this was like right when set 1 dropped. There, set 2 is now announced yet. I have my cards and all that stuff. And I think for your young kids, I would say like this worked out really well for me. So your mileage may vary, but my son excelled really early in reading, and so that gave him a nice foothold to like start that process of playing games that required like understanding words and context and stuff like that. And so we started him with 20 card decks instead of the 60. Built like really simple 20 card decks of like costs 1 through 4, 1 through 5 of some capacity, with cards that he likes, characters that he finds is cool, and hand it to him. Because one of the biggest things is like there's like 60 cards is like it's a lot of cards, right? Like there's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of like when you're starting to think about like keywords and mechanics, like it's a lot. And so my son's got tiny hands. He's like his dad, so he can't shuffle 60 card decks. I can barely shuffle 60 card decks, and so the 20 card decks was better as a nice digestible amount for him to start with.
Sorry, just a point of clarity. When you're saying your 60 card decks, are you a single sleeve or a double sleeve fan?
I can't do double sleeve. My hands are too small. I've tried, Ryan. I've tried a couple times. Like, oh, this is sick. I like how they feel in my hand. Like when I'm like doing the TCG card shuffle thing, and then I go to pick them up. I'm like, oh no, I can't do this. Like,
it's everywhere.
I need to ask my opponent to shuffle my deck if I double sleeve it. You know what I mean?
Okay, Christian, on that note about the TCG card shuffle thing. So I noticed on plug for the recent Versus series that you and Ernie had.
Yes.
In watching that, I got to see some of the live TCG card shuffle. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about this? Because if you've seen some more experienced card game players, you've probably seen them fidgeting, shuffling the cards while they're holding them in their hand, like while their opponent's playing, while they're kind of contemplating their own turn. Tell us a little more about like what that is.
So the real truth is that we just all have a bunch of problems, and we can't not have a fidget toy in front of us. That we're thinking so hard, and we're scared of what our opponents are going to play. We need some way to just calm down, and our cards are the first thing that we can grab. In like a real term, like, technically, like let's say like if you pick like a song, right? Like when you like play Ariel and you grab a song and you reveal it and put it into your hand, and you put it in your hand, you kind of do this and you shuffle your cards a little bit. So your opponent doesn't quite know exactly like what card is in your hand or whatever, but 9 times out of 10, it's purely habit. It's fidget. Like a common
fidget
habit
spinner for you.
It is just a fidget spinner. Yep. That's all it is, truly. There's
that's
no secret sauce. It's not like a braille. I'm not like signing to my opponent that I'm gonna kick his butt with these. It's truly just my own problem.
That's hilarious. Back on brand to your kid. So you started with the 20 cards, and then how did that kind of dive into the full size decks?
Yeah, so the 20 card is good also to teach like small keywords at a time. And like it's easy to like build lots of 20 card decks. Like, if you build one 60 card deck, you can build 3 20 card decks, is kind of math. So he got to experiment with lots of different decks and learn new keywords. Like, whoa, what's rush mean? I can attack you immediately, and he gets all excited because he can kill my guy right away. And I'm like, you got me, and like you get to enjoy that learning process, and he loved it. And then we upgraded to 40 card decks where we're starting to introduce mulligans. That was like a big thing because now mulligan is like a very complicated layer of the game because the mulligan is so powerful, because like it's not like in other games like Magic or Digimon even. Like it's not a binary choice. It's not either do you keep or do you send them all. It's do I keep 1, do I keep 2, do I keep 3, do I keep which combination of 3? It's very complicated. And so like I think 40 cards and the mulligan helped my son like kind of start to navigate like what does that mean, like now there's more keywords that like intermingle between each other, like there's these cards that have rush and evasive. It ups the complexity a little bit. And now he's on full 60 card decks, and once he can handle 60 card decks at a home level, then we started bringing them to local events. Like I brought him to Bunker Games and Gamers Den, and just for fun local events to play at, and eventually set champs that he loves to compete at. So that's kind of like where we kind of scaled it up. But I think the 20 card, especially for younger kids, again, my son is 6. If you have like a 12-year-old, you can probably start on 60. Your 12-year-old can read all the cards, right? So,
and Christian, your son has had some local success, right?
He sure has. He has gone to 2 set champs, a Mirabelle and a Scar set champ. He is top. He has top 8'd both of those. both of those events. In fact, the Mirabelle event, he was my round 1 opponent, and he kicked my butt. Like, I always tell, like, a big thing in our family, me and my wife, like, we can't let our kids win games.
Same.
We don't beat them hard. We beat them gently, but we can't. I always tell them, like, we're never going to give you a win. And I try my best not to let that kid beat me round 1, but I was on the back foot all game, and he just crushed me. It was those games were not close. He like triple daised me in 2 games. I'm like, oh boy, you won.
Insider trading. He probably knew the ins and outs of your deck. He knew exactly what to play.
He did. He absolutely did. Is the worst part. Like, he just like knew how to play against me. Like, every time I play against my family, I always lose to them because they know how to play so well.
Sure.
He's playing your hand for you. Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
What about
what was your question?
Go ahead, Nathaniel.
So I was going to say that had to have been certainly a proud dad moment for you, though, to see him, have success, especially in a more competitive environment. But I do want to give a plug to your wife as well, because Ernie has referred to Christian's wife Hannah as the big boss. So she is also very, very good at this game.
She is, and she's gotten like she is such a grinder. She can lose a bunch and just keep playing, and that's like how she gets so good at the game. Like, she's had so many reps, and like she's been playing the game since set 1, but I would say like set 5 and set 6 she started like consistently topping local events with like some of the best players locally. Like, she's like playing against Scott Markinson and Alex Johnson and doing well, and I'm like, all those reps have paid off, you know what I mean? Like, she's a killer. And Ernie has also said that I'm the 3rd best player in my family, and he's not wrong. Edison is definitely better than me. Not even close.
That's hilarious.
Better tournament record against me than most people, that's for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned your kids and your wife and your whole family's involved, right? But one thing we like to highlight, at least in this podcast, is balancing, this hobby with dad life. And with both parents significantly into this game, how are you all able to, quote unquote, take turns playing the game? Like, how do you balance, one night I'm going out and my wife's staying home with the kids, or vice versa? And as well as just successfully parenting kids, like, beyond the game. Like, how have you found that balance, or what have you found that works best for you that you can maybe explain to the listeners as well?
Yeah, that's such a interesting and deep question, because like, at least, I've only been a parent for 7 years now, so like I'm still very new at it, as many would say. And I got married at 19 is when I got married. So I got married at 19. We had our first son at 20, our first kid at 20. And so I found like balance is just something that, because I'm sure you dads can attest to this, each year it feels like you're kind of in a new stage of your life in some capacity. Like, when I first had Edison, my first kid, we were still in college. And so me and Hannah were still in college. We were working part-time, and I was doing internships full-time during summer while paying for, living, but also going to school full-time so we could both finish. And so like that was like a big part of like just balance there, was like just look different than balance now, like, because like we have we just bought a house recently, so we have that going. My wife started working part-time again recently, so like 3 nights a week she'll work from 12 to 10, so I am usually solo dadding it for those hours during the weekday. So I'm also like working remotely from home and watching the kids and getting ready for bed and getting dinner and all that. So like that's at least for us, like that's a really important step for us to like find, like, we need, it's Thursday night, that's your Lorcana night, or this Saturday is our Lorcana night. But we're also like very blessed that we have family pretty close to us that loves watching our kids. We have the village. Not everyone has the village. We have the village. It's been a huge blessing. Oftentimes, like, there'll be like a Winnabox on a Saturday that we'll, like, that's our balance. Like, we'll both go to that on Saturday, and my mom will watch our kids that day, and we both get some Lorcana in that day to do that. But sometimes also, like, there's times where we just can't go to a game store this week. Like, I'd say with all the tournament prep that we've done and traveling, like, in 2 weekends back to back, we haven't gone to a local game store in quite a while, but we've been home, right? And so like that's also like that's part of our balance as well. Like, how much do we want to travel out, and how, we can, because my wife is here and I'm here, we can enjoy the game together, and my son can enjoy the game together, and so that's it does come to a week by week basis, but my wife is really, really good at recognizing if I need a break, and we try to just recognize that with each other. It's something we've learned through 8 years of marriage, and we've gotten pretty good at recognizing it now. So
that's awesome. Yeah, one thing we've touched on too in previous episodes as well is, I guess the two big things, right, is communicate with your partner. Just advice
Huge.
in general to all those listeners as well. Communication is key, whether or not you need a break from home life and you need to get out to play the game, but also recognizing too that maybe you played the game too much and you need to spend some time at home, right? Finding that balance. And I think the other big thing that we've discussed in our podcast as well is we also have a lot of other interests, whether it be sports or movies or stuff like that. So understanding and talking about a budget with your partner early, especially if your partner doesn't play the game and maybe doesn't have as much invested into the game as you might have, understanding and establishing that budget first and foremost, I think is kind of the two big things that we've touched on. Nathaniel and Ryan, is there anything too you'd wish to highlight again to our listeners that we've maybe touched on before?
I think I love the thing that Christian brought up about, like, maybe you go really hard in the paint one weekend and you go to an event, and then just being able to like shut off and like take a break from Lorcana for a while too, and like how that's also an important thing to do. And some of these things are really small, right? Like he talked about like the little prep things you do, right? Food at tournaments, like mental breaks from the game can actually help you probably in the long run too.
It can. That's a huge thing. For me, I love going to tournaments. It's one of my favorite things to do. But if I do it every week, I will get burned out. And that's where like the other hobbies like are really important, really, really important, right?
Yeah,
that's a very good point to bring up.
I mean,
go ahead, Ryan.
We've talked about it at length before, but just communication piece is so huge, and then having just that support system, the village around you is so essential. Whether it's playing Lorcana or whether it's if you like watching movies with your significant other, if you like going shopping, whatever it is, but finding that time to have a support system where family is watching or a babysitter's watching, you have the ability to kind of get out together and maintain the relationship that started your family in the first place. I think is also very important to value that too.
I do want to bring up a really cool point. I think also about the Lorcana community and in Minnesota too. There's a lot of dads. This is a lot of families' first TCGs, and I remember like a moment that happened recently where we were kind of talking about like community and like village moments. Like there was a weekend where recently where we were testing for the CCS event and the Wisconsin WCC event with Ernie and Vo, where they invited me out to play test at a store that's like it's like 15 minutes from me, because I live more north. And my wife was gone that day for other obligations. I'm like, well, I have both kids. It's not going to work out for me. And I remember Ernie, shout out to Ernie. He's like, bring your kids, just bring them. They could play too if they want, or they can hang out. And I was kind of gobsmacked. I'm like, I've never been in a TCG where someone told me I can bring my kids to a game store to like play test for like a major event. I was like kind of like taken aback by that, and it's like so foreign to me. And I hauled up my kids. I loaded up the snacks. I brought my son loves the Nintendo Switch. I'm like, it's a day for games, son. You can bring the Switch if you want. And they were perfect. Ernie's kids were there. They're a lot older, so they didn't really like interact. But it was just like it felt like so good to have also like the local community just like also have that support, not just like family, to be like, we want your kids here. Your kids are not a burden to your playtime. And I just think it's so special to have that in this game. That's not in any other game. You're not going to find that in any other game.
I wholeheartedly echo that. I mean, the family atmosphere and the family feel do, at least in our limited experience, like going out, maybe compared to you, to a game store or a local event, I would echo the family atmosphere and the family fun when it comes to this game as well. And I think that's a big thing, at least for me personally, why I've stuck around as long as I have up to this point as well. So
yeah,
I think with that, we're going to start wrapping a bow on this episode. But before we do that, Christian, we want to give you an opportunity to maybe plug any sort of services or social media, the floor is yours. Feel free to plug anything you want at this point before we wrap it up.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Well, if you're interested in following me, I'm on the Minnesota Facebook group. I love to post there. I enjoy the game. I enjoy the community. I've been working on a couple different projects for the community to help newer players as well. That's kind of been brought up. If you are interested in coaching or just have other advice or questions, my private messages on Facebook are always open. I may not get to you right away, because I'm a dad. It's part of the podcast, obviously, but I do see the message, and I'm always trying to, I try to get back as best I can. But and if you're always interested in dedicated coaching, if you're someone who maybe is excited to go to their first championship, or they've taken a break and they just need to catch up, we can set up some time, and that about an hour and a half session I usually do, 75 minutes usually. I do about 35 an hour, or 35 for a session, give or take, and I'm going to get that tailored to you as best as your needs. I'm going to try to figure out exactly how to help you get those action-oriented goals figured out. I'm a very goal-oriented person, and I'll keep track with you. Like, during the Scars Set Champ season, a lot of people who hadn't won Scars before that got coaching through me was able to secure Scars, and that was like more exciting to me than actually winning Scars myself, because it was I enjoy teaching. It's just something I've discovered. The older I get, the more I just love to do. So more opportunities to that is always good. Yeah. And again, thank you, DuckTale Dads, for letting me join here. This is an awesome time. I would love to be back again sometime.
I do. Before we part ways, I do also want to just piggyback on what Christian just said. One of his students did actually specifically credit Christian's coaching and teaching on what actually helped him win a set championship. So not only just getting the Scar card, but even winning the whole tournament. So another feather in your quiver, Mr. Robin Hood over there.
That's their success. That's theirs right there. That's theirs. Shout out to Jacob Weldy. He did great. He killed it at that event. I was keeping track of him all day. He did really, really well.
That's so cool to hear.
Any last minute thoughts, Ryan, Nathaniel, before we put a bow on this?
I think it's cool to see a fellow coach in a different capacity maybe than the coaching that I've done get joy out of their students or the people that they are coaching, their successes, and crediting them. Christian, that was well said. Yeah, would expect nothing less out of you. That was pretty awesome.
Thank you. You're making me blush again. The audience can't see it though, but cheeks are red here.
Thank you so much for letting us hear your thoughts and sharing them so willingly and openly, and just like everyone else in the Minnesota Lorcana community does through Facebook and everything like that. Truly been a delight and an honor to have you on the podcast, and really excited and hopeful maybe we can have you on again in the future, and we can talk a little bit more in depth about the other like 4 hours of content we could probably create out of this group
Ain't
before.
That the truth, man. It's so much.
Yes. Thank you, Christian, for joining. We would love to have you on a future episode again, whether or not we go through our staple series or whatever other series that we come up again with in the future. For the rest of our audience, please be sure to check out our Instagram. We're still on that hunt for the enchanted on our Instagram page, DuckTale Dads, as well as we now have a YouTube channel. So a lot of the podcast content will be on YouTube, and then with our YouTube channel, we're planning to have extended videos, gameplay videos, and kind of dive into that realm as well for additional content for all of you to enjoy. With that, thank you again, Christian. Thank you, Nathaniel and Ryan. And gentlemen, let's get the duck out of here.